Why, hello, learning nerds. Before we begin today's show, I want to thank our awesome sponsors, with first giving a shout out to Idle Courses Academy. Idle Academy is the first and only authorized vocational school for instructional design and online learning. It includes a comprehensive hands-on curriculum with certifications, credentials, expert coaches, mentors, a community of practice, paid experience opportunities, industry-preferred software access, live events, and ongoing updates. Your entire instructional design career is neatly packaged behind a single login for just $88 a month. Check out all the details at idlecourses.com/academy, and you can use my code Luke for $88 off the yearly membership. Okay, now let's start the show. Hello, learning nerds, and welcome on in to the nerdiest podcast you're going to hear today, and welcome on in to the last Learning Nerd podcast of 2023 as we usher in 2024. I hope you all had a wonderful and safe holiday. And then as far as for with this upcoming new year, safe travels and best wishes as well. Thinking back around with everything from the last year, it feels like a blur. A part of me still feels like we're living in 2020, and maybe that's because of the fact that I'm still working remotely as I'm talking to you inside of my home office right now, and trying to be able to think that 2024 is just around the corner. Well, it really doesn't make that much sense. But the other thing too, if you were anything like me, is that this has been one of the busiest years I have ever had. Busy for all the right reasons, but truly there has been so much going on, and it never really stopped since kicking off 2023 with a bang. And then now we're already here and we're crossing that finish line. Now is the time when people are thinking about their goals of 2024 and what are they trying to be able to do. And if you're like me, I currently don't know what day it is, and I am full of so much cheese and trying to get to the gym to make myself feel somewhat better. But anyway, as we're thinking about for this year, I also wanted to stop and pause and reflect upon 2023 and just exactly what did we do? What did we accomplish? What happened from a content perspective from all of the things that I've been sharing with you, with the podcast, blog, YouTube, and everything else, but also to thinking about our industry, what has changed, what were the impacts, and of course, looking at history to be able to now think about the future and perhaps where we're going to be going with a couple of different things. As I was thinking about this, 5 things really came to mind, and in this episode, I want to break those down, unpack each one, and to explore them a little bit more before we dive on in to 2024. So where to begin with all of this? Well, in order to help me with the timeline, I went back and I looked through my LinkedIn timeline to be able to pull some of these dates and trying to be able to see some of these things. All of a sudden, all the memories came back of like, oh yeah, don't you remember this? And don't you remember when this happened? It's like, oh yeah, that's right. That did happen in 2023. Feels like long ago, but really it was in the last year. So the first thing that happened inside of our space was actually the release of the audiobook of What I Wish I Knew Before Becoming an Instructional Designer. This was something that if you have read this book by now, and if you have been listening to this show, you have heard me mention about how I did not want to make this audiobook. I knew it was going to be extremely challenging. I already had the physical book, I had the ebook, but man, an Audible version, like, is this something that I really want to be able to do? But from speaking with my wife, who kept on encouraging me and saying that you already have the podcast, you have the voice, why don't you just, put it together and offer this? And of course, from a UDL perspective, I want to be able to provide every form of alternative for you to enjoy this content. So why not? Let's make an audiobook. Let's figure this out and see exactly how this goes. Now, I should have realized about how hard this was going to be. I knew that since I was purposefully delaying the project because I kept on trying and I realized how much time it was going to take, and I kept on trying to carve out more time. And if you've ever tried this yourself to make an audiobook, you know what I'm talking about. It is not easy to do. But here I went inside of my closet and I recorded 25 different files essentially within a couple of days of just reading and reading and reading. And eventually, this book, it came out to like 4.5 hours of me reading to you about instructional design tips and strategies and tricks around the field and everything else. And it was done. Well, kinda. It was kinda done. And what I mean by this is that I encountered every single issue humanly possible, and I had no idea how to get around them. Eventually, I reached out to an audio engineer to be able to say, "Can you help me? I cannot figure this out, even though I've been podcasting for years. I'm a musician. I use GarageBand on a daily basis. I don't get it. I'm doing something wrong." And this taught me the important lesson about knowing when to ask for help and not being embarrassed or afraid to be able to do so, because if someone has the answers and you can pay them $100 to be able to help you, it's worth it at the end of the day. And certainly trying to be able to do this finally did something different and something unique from that perspective. And what I'm proud of is that I have not seen a single instructional design book have an Audible version besides this one, which I'm starting to think it's because of the fact that it's extremely hard to be able to do. So maybe my fellow colleagues and peers are onto something by saying, no, why would I want to be able to do that? But the way that I wrote the book was more conversational in style and tone, and I knew it was going to be enjoyable if I did read it and to be able to give you this opportunity to listen to it wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Just look at the podcast, trying to be able to do that. And that was the very first thing that I did in 2023. And let me just say, if you were ever thinking about creating your own Audible version of a book or creating your own audiobook, please tell me. Let me know. I am more than happy to share any and all tips and tricks that I learned from this process. And if it can help you out, and if it can save you any of those agonizing hours of trying to be able to figure out what you were doing wrong, I am an open book, no pun intended, in order to be able to help you out with this project. The next massive project in 2023 that I tried to be able to do, which luckily it all did work out, was rebranding and relaunching Instructional Design Institute. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you've heard me talk about Instructional Design Institute from years ago. At the height of the pandemic, I was constantly working on this idea of IDI and trying to figure out how best to serve you with what you were looking for when it comes to learning more about designing online learning experiences. And the thing is that I had this idea in mind, and at the time, I was absolutely focused and driven around this idea of a membership. And if you don't know what a membership is, think about it as in a type of a monthly subscription-based model where you are paying X amount of dollars per month in order to be able to have access to different forms of courses, guidance, community, and everything of a sort. And why I was so obsessed with this idea was because I found, for me, I was the type of a target audience person who was joining these different forms of memberships. I had them all throughout in various different types of ways and different types of communities. And I thought that was going to be the best way to help out with everybody else. Now, here is what I learned from being able to do that. It's really hard to be able to do that and to sustain a membership, as far as for trying to be able to do things from having weekly office hours to making sure that the platform is running correctly, to make sure that the content is going to be new and updated all the time. Essentially, I wanted to create an instructional design version of LinkedIn Learning, but to make it better and to have much more of an emphasis on support and community and an instructor type of a facing role as for with myself, with being able to help you with everything as well. And I launched this back around 2020 or so, and it did okay, but I realized I was not doing the best job possible in order to help with supporting you. And what I found is from other different types of endeavors, with teaching online at the University of Miami, teaching at Southern New Hampshire University, with more and more workshops and webinars and presentations that I was delivering, I was realizing that I was like, this isn't necessarily the best way to help out people. It does fine, but I could do a better job as far as really trying to be able to educate the masses when it comes to instructional design. What if I made it into a cohort? What if I updated every piece of content? What if I made it modern? What if I really threw into this essentially my heart and soul with being able to really talk about designing learning experiences and giving people hands-on practical skills and applications in order for them to properly be able to do this? What would this look like? So that's what I did. And I had to take a page out of that book that was talking about being able to kill your own darlings. And that's what I did. So I tore it all down. I got rid of the learning platform that I was using. I moved on over to a different learning platform. I updated every video. I changed every assignment. I just completely redid the whole thing. And then all of a sudden, it was there. It was live. And I had you folks who were attending, taking the courses, and working with me on a weekly cadence throughout this type of a 7-week-long learning experience. And it was amazing. It still is by far the most fun I have ever had in recent memory that I can think about. And seeing the transformations, and also seeing, too, who is actually taking this course, which is one thing that you folks have asked me about on LinkedIn of like, who is this for? And I was saying about, well, I had an intended type of target audience in mind, but clearly you folks have kind of proven me wrong as far as for who is going to be taking it. From aspiring instructional designers to professors, all the way to deans and directors of online learning departments at some pretty major universities. So I was like, well, wow, this is going to be really fun. And of course, it was, because having that cohort element, that community element, and bringing people together, sharing different perspectives from those who are just learning about instructional design, and they have a fresh set of eyes as far as for they have not become jaded with a few different types of things that we know so well within this space, to those of years of experience who have all these different types of ideas in mind of knowing about what has worked well and maybe not so much, and having these types of open conversations week after week from andragogy, backward design, universal design for learning, AI, evaluation methods, analysis methods. It was just so interesting and has become so much fun. And by far, it was a highlight of 2023 with all the cohorts that have gone through this so far. Third cohort, and with the next cohort starting up in early March for the fourth cohort. And absolutely, that was a huge part of this last year. Now, not everything in 2023 was sunshine and rainbows. There was one major event that I was thinking about of what made an impact in our space that certainly we have to talk about, and this was the acquisition of EduFlow. For many of you, we actually met because of EduFlow, as specifically within EduFlow Academy. And if you don't know, EduFlow is a learning management system that really went over the top with trying to be able to think about what types of learning experiences would really be impactful and meaningful inside of an LMS. What would it look like? How would it actually become a modern tool for people to be able to use? And truly, in my opinion, EduFlow did everything right. They were able to collect a ton of feedback. They were able to create this type of an amazing learning management system that hands down is better than 99% of LMSs on the market today. But one day, like all of you, you found out that there was going to be an announcement that, hey, EduFlow was actually acquired by a company called Multiverse, and this is now going to essentially become a private LMS only to be used by Multiverse. Now, when I first heard this news, of course, I was like, uh-oh, all my courses are inside of EduFlow. I really don't know what to do. But also, I have to say, too, from putting on my realistic hat for a second, because, of course, this is the real world. There are business transactions and things of that nature. I had to be very perfectly clear that I am so happy for David and William and Tara and the entire team, because my goodness, if anyone deserves it as far as for being able to take that next step with everything, it's all of them. I have so much love for the entire team at EduFlow. And really, it sounds like a win-win from everything that they were going to be going through, which fantastic. And once again, I am so happy for all of them. But of course, that realization of, oh no, EduFlow is going away. What's going to happen? But the other major part about that really was the thing that I was wondering about was EduFlow Academy. What was going to happen to that? Because what they were able to do with EduFlow Academy, as far as for making a ton, I don't know how many courses are currently up there on the website. I believe there was at least like 25 different types of courses, ranging from literally anything you want to know within instructional design, learning and development, or any form of adjacent field. And it was amazing. And truly, the one course that I kept on thinking about was the OG course, essentially, of making this MOOC that was called Instructional Design Principles for Course Creators. And inside of here, it was a 3-week-long endeavor. We're trying to be able to have this type of a cohort, this weekly cadence, and really put and to capture this magic and this essence. And I don't use the term magic lightly, but this really did feel like it was something magical of hundreds of people going through a learning experience at the same time, supporting each other, guiding one another, and being able to help out one another and share resources. And it just became something different. I have never seen anything like it to this day, as far as for bringing together all of the learning nerds and trying to have one space for us to be able to gather, to share, and to learn from one another. And I still remember the first time that I did a presentation around backward design for the first cohort of this program, and there was something like 500 people inside of a Zoom call, and I asked one question to start off the webinar, and just immediately the Zoom chat explodes with comments, and it was like, this is going to be different. This is truly going to be amazing to be able to see. And of course, this then transpired inside of a course as well as the live events, but then also on LinkedIn. The amount of you who were tagging me when you completed the course and sharing your certificate and the highlights and how much you enjoyed everything and that you made new friends, it was just awesome to be able to do. And that was like, where is that going to go? Because that is so amazing. And for that, I don't have an answer. And I'm not exactly sure about where that is going to go or what is going to become the next type of thing to capture this magic and community and support and everything of a sort. But I will say that once again, I'm just so thankful we were a part of that because it was so unique. I have never experienced something like that before in my life, and I connected with so many of you because of that opportunity to be able to work with the entire team at EduFlow. So I'm super thankful for it. I'm really happy we were able to do that together, and I'm hopeful that there will become something new in the future for us to be able to work on. I'm still in touch with all the folks over at EduFlow, by the way. So maybe there will be something in the future to be able to do, but we'll see as far as for that goes. If you're also wondering too about where my content migrated off of, because of course, EduFlow was my learning management system for all of my different types of courses. Luckily for me, I was able to connect with some of the folks over at D2L, and they helped me with putting all my learning experiences over on Brightspace. So I have to give a shout out to all of them because they worked like crazy to be able to get everything up and running and to help me with all of my silly and ridiculous questions. And now Instructional Design Institute is over there. Same thing with the collaborating and building relationships with SME's course. And eventually I'm going to have more things over there as well too. So stay tuned because that will be coming in 2024 as far as for being able to try to capture some of that magic and to expand upon it and to do a little bit more of everything. But so far, that's what I've been able to do. Now, without a doubt, I had to mention about this next topic, which all of you are familiar with by now, and that is the boom of AI. I didn't really think that AI was going to become something that this was all that I was going to be talking about in 2023. And somehow, some way, I found myself inside of this space sharing about AI and its impact on instructional design. So let me take you back for a second. In 2019, I worked on a program at MIT around AI and designing around AI. And the professor at the time mentioned about ChatGPT, and I didn't think anything of it. It was just another word. It went right over my head. And I was like, yeah, that sounds interesting. And I kind of went along with my day, not thinking that AI was going to interact with my world specifically. And then one of the instructional designers on my team mentioned it later on, where she's just like, "Don't you remember that he did talk about this?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're right." Like I can go back and I can watch that video. He did talk about ChatGPT years ago, and now seeing where it's at is just truly crazy. I also have to give a shout out to my friend and colleague, Peter Shea. And Pete kept on reaching out to me, basically saying, "Why have you not tried this out yet? It is going to be different. It is really going to change things up." And as an educator, I have this type of this red flag radar that whenever somebody says that something is going to revolutionize education and change everything, I'm like, yeah, okay. Sure, it's going to do that because that was supposed to be done already. It was supposed to be the competency-based education or flipped classroom model or with micro-learning or with virtual reality or with whatever other different form of technique. This is going to be the thing that's going to just shake up education from K through 12 and higher ed and everything else of the sort. And it never really seems to pan out. Now, don't get me wrong. All of those things have their place in time. They all have their benefits, and I'm not dismissing any of them. But to be able to say that once again, here comes another thing that's going to revolutionize education, I'm like, meh, sure it will. But Pete kept on messaging me, kept on encouraging me, and finally, he convinced me when he mentioned about how it can draft learning objectives. I was like, wait, you're telling me that ChatGPT can draft learning objectives? He's like, yeah. Like, all right. Well, now I gotta try it. Let's see how this goes. Sure enough, go into ChatGPT, ask it to create some learning objectives for one of my courses. It didn't do the best of jobs, to be honest with you. It used some of the terminology that we typically say that we never use when drafting learning objectives, like with understand, know, and learn. Those are not measurable, therefore not really useful. And of course, it included some of those words, but then I asked it to revise those and not to specifically use those 3 words. And then sure enough, it made better learning objectives. It's like, that's interesting. Okay. What else can this do? And eventually, I started to dabble more and more, listening and trying to be able to read from other people and what they were doing. And then, sure enough, it was able to help me with creating different forms of scenarios, revising syllabi, even drafting letters of recommendations and everything. It's like, well, maybe this could actually do something that really shake things up a bit. So hence, with my experimenting, I recorded it. I threw it up on YouTube for 15 ways to use ChatGPT for educators. And sure enough, that got quite a bit of buzz going at the time because I had the right place, right time mentality when it came to sharing about that information. And many of you mentioned about how incredible it was and seeing all these different types of effects. And there was also plenty of people who had a healthy amount of skepticism, and I don't blame them one bit as far as for thinking that way. And now, here we are a year later, and now seeing with GPT-4, with Google Bard, with Claude, with DALL-E, with any of the different forms of LLMs and what they're able to do. And it's insane. Truly, it's insane. And if you're sick of talking about AI or hearing about AI, I do not blame you in any way, shape, or form. When thinking about everything that higher education is also currently going through, or just anything for else in this matter with us inside of this L&D space, we have all these other problems to be able to consider that we still haven't figured out the fundamentals of so many things. And now on top of this, everyone wants to talk about the shiny new flashy thing. So I understand why folks are saying, no, I don't want to talk about AI. I want to stick to this and try to be able to make this side of the house better for whatever you're going to be talking about within the learning experience. And I totally get that. But from a GPT-4 perspective, the technology just keeps on advancing every single time. And I'm just curious to see where this is going to go. Being able to download my own simulation and then to upload that into a platform, that was mind-blowing because simulations cost a lot of money. They take a lot of time to be able to do. And what you're saying to me is that for a few hours, I can try to be able to draft something up and have it be what I'm looking for. Well, yeah, that's game-changing. If we're talking about what's going to be revolutionary to create my own simulations, to create my own artwork, to help me out with streamlining processes on a daily basis, then yeah, I would say that's impactful. So I'm pretty curious as far as for where this is going to go. I'm sure there's going to be other negative aspects that are going to be coming about, like with the original, with talking about from plagiarism issues to thinking about the fake citation problems. Like those are always going to be there. I'm sure that something new is going to pop up in regards to data and privacy and sensitivity. And I'm sure we're going to have another big aha kind of moment of like, uh-oh, now what do we do kind of a thing. But at least I am hopeful that for humanity, we can figure it out as far as for getting around that problem, solving that problem, and then moving on and trying to be able to keep in mind that AI is a tool. It is a Kickstarter for ideas. It's not going to replace you. It's not smart enough. It's not trying to be able to go in that direction. And for many of the decision makers out there, for organizations, do you really think that they are trying to be able to use AI to replace something when they have a hard time with adapting and using different forms of technology? And now we're trying to teach them about prompt engineering. I mean, like, no, it's not that realistic to be able to think about. So I'm not nervous. I'm not scared about anything like this. But we should, as educators, as instructional designers, we should be aware about technology and what is coming down the pike. And in 2024, maybe there will be something new from Google, Amazon, I don't know. I don't know what's going to be the next big thing, but I am very curious to see where this is going to go. In the last event of 2023, I'm going to try to call it an event. My guess is one of the ways of being able to describe it was the publication of a massive amount of new books and literature around designing learning experiences and instructional design as a whole. There are a number of books that if you were to go into Google instructional design books right now, you're going to see the usual top books from Julie Dirksen, from Cami Bean, and from another of other different forms of authors. And then all of a sudden, we were blessed with the fact that all of this new publication and all these new pieces of literature came about. And I don't have enough time to read all these things. I'm kind of struggling here. I have a massive reading list right now of all the new books, and it feels like there's a new one that's coming out every single month, but I want to be able to get my hands on it to read more, to learn more. And this is something that I just think is so wonderful to be able to see for our field and to advance from a number of different ways. So let's think about this for a second. What were some of the books? Well, I mentioned about Cami Bean, the Accidental Instructional Designer. A version 2 just came out not too long ago from Julie Dirksen, who literally wrote the Bible of instructional design, created a new book called Talk to the Elephant, Design Learning for Behavioral Change, that already has a ton of positive reviews and ratings online. And it also wasn't just within the instructional design space, also within the learning science side of a house as well. One of the most popular books out there that I can think of is called How Learning Works, and a new edition of that just came out back in, as I say, just came out. No, it was like March of 2023. Nevertheless, still within 2023. And of course, the thing that I just wrapped up was my new ebook. It is specifically an ebook that was called So You Want to Become an Instructional Designer. And now that thing is finally out there as well, too. All the other books I mentioned about, way better than that book that I just wrote. But trying to be able to put that all together to help you out with every step along the way about how to actually become an instructional designer with every single embedded type of resource that I could provide for you, as well as talking about from theory and practical tips and steps as well, is now inside of that ebook. And I'll put a link inside of the show notes as well to be able to find all of these books. But it was a huge year of publishing more information and trying to be able to spread the good word about instructional design. And that, folks, those were the top 5 moments that I could think about as far as for making an impact within the instructional design space. Hope that didn't sound too egotistical. Now that I'm thinking about that, I've shared a lot about me. But anyway, I'm an open book. I want to be able to share more with you about this journey and what everything has really come through and gone through as far as from a content perspective, a content creation perspective, and obviously all the things that you have been either experiencing with me from going through all these different forms of products or services, or just hanging out with me here inside of the podcast space or on YouTube or whatever else. it has once again just been so awesome to be able to collaborate and to share and to learn from all of you from 2023 and soon to be 2024. But folks, that is really all I have for you. You can find anything on over inside of the show notes that I talked about today, or head on over to drlukehobson.com. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already to this show, to the YouTube channel, and to everything else that I have going on as well. But hey, I'll see you in 2024. Still can't believe I'm saying that. Soon to be, see you inside of 2024. And of course, as always, stay nerdy out there, and I'll talk to you next time.